This is a shocker, the kind of discovery that leaves an entire community gasping for answers and forces the rest of us to sit with the discomfort we'd rather look away from. A baby boy found lifeless, wrapped in a towel, hidden inside a black trash bag in a closet. That is not an image any of us are prepared to carry, and yet it is real. This happened. The child existed. The silence that followed was not just the absence of a cry, it was the echo of society's failure. On August 27, 2025, in Lexington, Kentucky, police were dispatched to a home near the University of Kentucky campus. The report was simple but devastating: an unresponsive infant. What they found will forever stain the record of that day. A baby boy tucked away in secrecy, a life cut off before most even knew it had begun. The coroner's office called it preliminary, inconclusive, waiting on microscopic tests. But the visual facts alone tell a haunting story. This was a child who never got the chance to be seen, to be named, to be held in the open. And in the middle of this tragedy stands a name, one that the media repeated, one that classmates whispered, one that the world suddenly came to know: Laken Snelling. Just 21 years old, a senior at the University of Kentucky, a cheerleader, an athlete, a student with a future lined up like a script. Team routines, academic deadlines, a public image polished in the way colleges love to showcase their talent. She was the face of achievement. But now, she is also the face of an investigation. She has been charged with concealing the birth of an infant, tampering with evidence, and abuse of a corpse. She has pleaded not guilty. She has been released on bond, confined to her parents' home in White Pine, Tennessee, wearing an ankle monitor. A sharp contrast to the life she once displayed online: bright uniforms and wide smiles, now replaced with silence and court dates. The unanswered questions are heavy, and they pull us in whether we want them to or not. Did the baby ever take a breath? Was there a cry that no one else heard? What circumstances led to a young woman giving birth in secrecy, only for the newborn to be hidden away? How does someone surrounded by teammates, coaches, classmates, and a university infrastructure still feel they had no one to turn to, no resource to reach out for, no path other than concealment? These are the questions that sit in the gaps between the official reports. They make us reflect not only on Laken Snelling's choices, but also on what we as a society ignored, minimized, or never built in the first place. Imagine the scene inside that Lexington home: a closet, dimly lit, filled with everyday belongings, clothes hanging, shoes on the floor, boxes stacked up, and then, hidden within that ordinary space, the extraordinary horror: a black trash bag containing a towel, and inside the towel, the body of a baby boy. It is a detail that investigators documented, and one that is impossible to hear without feeling a wave of anger, sadness, and shame. This was not a child lost to an accident on the road or to an illness that doctors fought against. This was a child hidden, in silence, from birth to death. The case is still developing, the autopsy incomplete, but already the public is divided. Some view Laken Snelling as a criminal, someone who should be punished to the fullest extent of the law. Others see her as a young woman caught in the crushing weight of secrecy, fear, and shame, someone who may have believed she had no options. Both perspectives raise uncomfortable truths. If this was a crime, it is one that shocks us with its coldness. If this was desperation, it exposes the cracks in how we prepare, educate, and support young people when they face realities like pregnancy, stigma, and pressure. Laken's background paints a picture that, on the surface, seemed far from tragedy. Raised in White Pine, Tennessee, she was an athlete, described as popular, involved, and visible. Former classmates say she was someone who demanded attention, sometimes even to the point of control. Reports suggest she could be harsh, focused on image, unwilling to let her reputation slip. Others recall moments of conflict, stories that paint her as difficult. But no one expected this. No one imagined that the same young woman who led routines on a cheer mat would be the subject of headlines about a baby found in a closet. That dissonance between who she appeared to be and what was discovered inside that Lexington home is what makes this story so disturbing. We must ask ourselves, how does someone carry a pregnancy to term in a setting as public as a university campus without others noticing? Was it denial? Was it concealment? Did people suspect and choose not to act? Or is this a testament to how easy it can be to look away from someone's struggles when they appear, at least outwardly, to be fine? Universities often pride themselves on being communities. But what kind of community allows a young woman to give birth alone, to hide a child, to live with that secret until discovery forces it into the open? The legal proceedings will unfold, evidence will be tested, and the truth of what happened in those hours after the birth may one day become clear. But the deeper question, the one that should unsettle every viewer, is what this says about us. We live in a society with safe haven laws, with hospitals and emergency rooms always open, with hotlines and crisis centers meant to protect both mothers and children. And yet those systems failed here. They failed because they were either invisible to the one who needed them, or they were judged too risky, too shameful, too impossible to turn to. That is not just Laken Snelling's burden. That is ours. Stay with this story, because what comes next will only deepen the questions. As more testimony surfaces, as court hearings approach, as investigators piece together the timeline, we will be forced to confront whether this was an isolated act of desperation or a reflection of larger systemic neglect. Was this baby's life stolen by one person's choice, or by a network of silence that stretched across family, campus, and community? And as we move forward, we will examine who Laken Snelling was before the headlines, her teenage years in Tennessee, her reputation among peers, the image she worked to project, and the contradictions that may have built up until they finally broke in the most devastating way imaginable. Because hidden in her story may be lessons about how easily appearances can deceive, and how quickly silence can become deadly. When you pull back the layers of this case, the contradictions only grow sharper. On one side, you have a university senior, involved in athletics, performing in front of crowds, surrounded by teammates and coaches, the kind of student most parents would proudly point to as a success story. On the other side, you have secrecy, silence, and a hidden birth that no one saw until it was too late. The contrast is almost too much to hold in one thought, and yet both are true at once. That is what unsettles us. It forces us to ask how someone could live with two realities so extreme without anyone around them seeing the fracture lines. Those who knew Laken in high school have painted different portraits. Some say she was admired, outgoing, a natural leader who thrived in the spotlight of cheerleading and athletics. Others described her as intimidating, controlling, even cruel at times. Reports have surfaced that classmates viewed her as someone obsessed with image, with how she was seen, with making sure others fell in line with her. In one account, she was called a serial bully, someone who knew how to command attention and was willing to use power over others. In another, she was remembered simply as ambitious, competitive, unwilling to let anything compromise her appearance of success. Whether those accounts are exaggerations or honest memories, they all point to the same truth. There was more complexity to Laken than the smiling photographs suggested. And inside that complexity, there may have been pressure building long before this tragedy unfolded. The move from White Pine, Tennessee to the University of Kentucky offered a chance to step into a bigger stage. She became part of the UK stunt team, a program that demanded discipline, performance, and teamwork. Outwardly, it was another accomplishment. But the more public your role, the more private your struggles often become. How much pressure did she feel to maintain perfection? How much space did she have to admit weakness, or to reveal a secret that might damage her standing? When pregnancy entered the picture, was it seen as a crisis she could not allow to be exposed? We may never know every detail of her thought process, but the outcome suggests she felt there was no safe path forward, only concealment. Think about the silence it would take to hide a pregnancy. No doctor visits that others knew of, no hospital delivery, no public announcement. If classmates suspected, no one came forward. If friends noticed changes, they stayed quiet. Did they believe it was none of their business? Did they not want to confront an uncomfortable reality? Or did they simply not see it? Denial is not always one person's act. It can be collective.
Entire groups can choose to ignore what's in front of them because acknowledging it would disrupt the image they want to preserve. Was that what happened here? When investigators discovered the body of the infant, wrapped in a towel, placed inside a trash bag, hidden in a closet, they weren't just documenting a crime scene. They were documenting the final stage of a long series of silences. Each silence mattered. Each unspoken word, each avoided confrontation, each look the other way brought the story closer to that closet. That is why this case weighs heavily on all of us. It's not only about what one person did or didn't do, it's about the environment around her, the systems meant to protect children and mothers, the people who could have asked hard questions but didn't. The law is now focused on the charges: concealing the birth of an infant, tampering with evidence, abuse of a corpse. Legal experts say more could follow if the autopsy reveals new findings about the cause of death. But beyond the courtroom, there is the haunting reality of what this child never received. No hospital bracelet, no birth certificate, no first photograph in the arms of family. Instead, a towel, a bag, and a closet. That is the legacy we are left to reconcile. And it should make us furious, because these are preventable tragedies. We tell ourselves we have safety nets, resources, and options. But what good are they if young people in moments of crisis feel they cannot reach them? Some ask, what about the father? Investigators have confirmed that DNA testing is underway to determine paternity, but so far, no information has been released publicly. Whoever he is also part of this story. Was he aware of the pregnancy? Did he know the risks? Did he abandon responsibility, or was he shut out completely? Those answers matter, because responsibility for a child should never fall on one person alone. Yet, too often, when tragedy strikes, we focus only on the mother and forget that others may have been just as involved in creating the circumstances that led here. Laken Snelling has withdrawn from the university. She now sits at home under house arrest, awaiting her next court date, watched closely by the public eye she once courted in a very different way. Every decision she makes from now until the trial will be scrutinized, but no matter how the legal system rules, no matter how the facts are interpreted, one truth remains: a baby is gone. And the manner of his loss leaves an emptiness that legal definitions can never fill. As we continue deeper into this case, more voices will emerge. Classmates, neighbors, former teammates, even those who barely knew her but now feel compelled to speak. Some will defend her, saying she was misunderstood, that the pressure was immense, that she didn't know what else to do. Others will condemn her outright, calling her selfish, heartless, undeserving of sympathy. Between those extremes is the uncomfortable middle ground, where human complexity lives. It is in that middle ground that we must ask the hardest questions. Why do young women still feel they must carry secrets alone? Why does our culture create shame so strong that someone might choose concealment over help? And why do we continue to ignore warning signs until it's too late? Stay with this story, because what unfolds next is not just about a courtroom or a verdict. It is about the structures we have built, the stigmas we enforce, and the silence we tolerate. When the final details emerge, the outrage will be sharp. But outrage is easy. The real challenge will be to look in the mirror and admit that this tragedy was allowed to happen because the systems we trust to protect the vulnerable are still broken. This case is still unfolding, and will continue to bring you every update as it happens. If you found this breakdown helpful, make sure to hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the latest developments.